What's up, guys? Steve the Canadian coming at you, back for another one. And in this one, we are going to be talking turbos, oil, and updates on where this thing is and where it's about to be. Let's get into it. Alright, guys, welcome back. We're goddamn cars. We're going to start with the oiling system. So, this oiling system works off of a pump and a gear inside of the motor, down in here somewhere. So, what you get up top here is fluid constantly being pumped up to the cams. And without this plate, it just stays in there and it gets basically half-ass sucked to the other side and then drains back down into the case where it continues its life cycle. But there's one thing many people are forgetting in regard to these oiling systems. There is a suction effect that occurs it's not a sealed system, but it's about as close as you're going to get, having the pump create pressure to continue the pressure, but it is the oil draining back that continues a positive flow. And yes, I'm using the camera to show you a circle because that's what happens. So the very first thing that I see go wrong with people using these style of oiling systems on these motors is attempting to gravity drain back down to here, or gravity draining back down to here. Now, I understand the principle and I get the premise of why you would think that this turbo, being a gravity-fed turbo, see how it is just dripping out there? Because I was turning it over, so I put a little bit of oil in it. Might just need to run down back into the case, correct? But here's another factor when the turbo's involved. If you just pump oil to the turbo up here, like this is backwards. This is all based off of a comment I got, and it's a very valid comment. That is upside down. But I did not have, and I went out and got, a 10mm socket so I could take out that bottom bolt. If you guys see that one in there, where is it? I'm not pointing there. Yeah, right there. It's hidden under there, and I didn't have a 10mm. I couldn't find it. So I went and got one, so I'm going to clock that, but just imagine it's clocked the correct direction. The turbo, everyone complains that these turbos drip. They drip oil, they drip feed, they drip slowly. You don't get a lot of oil. So everyone just gets back pressure blowing out of the exhaust, out of here. But this turbo works the same way as this oiling system. If it is not a constant system that is like 70% sealed, it doesn't work properly. Because if you get down inside there, okay, you guys can see right off the bat, there's a hole and there's a cavity and there's another hole beneath that. It's going around a turbine wheel. So in order for the oil to move, once it gets into that negative pressure, oh, there's a good one. There it is. Once the oil gets into a negative pressure zone, because it's thicker and has to pass through all those cavities, it can just sit in the turbo and then drip out. See, that drip's gone. Ooh. But if you have it connected to even the slightest bit of suction, hence the engine's pressure pulling itself back down to a gravity feed, but the constant loop keeps it going, you will drain the turbo with zero issue as long as the turbo is above the drain. But if you just run that down to here, everyone I see that runs turbos on these small engines is just smoking away, or they have issues, or they can't get it to pump right. It's because you're just draining gravity back. The turbo pools up in those chambers I showed you. So that is just science of fluid dynamics. Oil does not easily pass through that, but with the slightest amount of release of pressure, it becomes gravity fed basically and will flow back. So when running a turbo system, you want to use your stock oiling system. Now I get it. You guys are going to talk about overheating and all that. We'll get into that in a second. Because yes, you can add an oil cooler, but on this current project, there's not a lot of places for one. And I can make it work up here, but it's getting way too busy up here to begin with. But that is for the oiling part. You can add in pumps, you can add all that, but then you're actually overpressuring the turbo's oiling system. So it's still going to continue to build up in there. You're not going to get rid of that problem. You'll have that little bit of negative pressure. But if it's released through suction of that gravitational pull, it all flows continuously. All right, so that's the first thing we're going to go over, because everybody keeps getting all extra with all this stuff. You don't need that. Use the motor for what it is, or you need a bigger system, because if you're doing it on a small motor, this is like, that's all not needed. You're overdoing it. All right? So, can't remember the commenter's name, but thank you for commenting. I am flipping the turbo around. I do understand that's the drain. That's the intake. But, and you guys even saw, it feeds out the same way. If you were to pour oil in it, it'll drip out of this, same as it'll drip out of this, until there is a constant system of suction running through it. And that constant suction will ensure that your cams are getting good lube. Because a lot of people forget too, when you're robbing it from here, you're robbing it from your cams. So if you're robbing it from your cams and then feeding it back to here, what are your cams getting? Nothing. Your cams are getting nothing. Stop it. Stop it, people. Okay? I don't know where these crazy ideas come from and why everyone does it, but it doesn't work. All right? So that covers the oiling system. You want to save your 125cc, use the plate as it's intended, and just keep everything above your oiling system. And you will have zero issues draining it back to the motor. You will ensure your head gets oil all the way across to the other side. This plate should be getting oil to it. But if you're doing that drain back to the case or drain back to the top thing, this isn't getting oil over here. That's why you guys are having motor problems. But either way, some people make it work good, but usually not on an engine like this. Actually, I haven't seen any videos of anyone making it really work good. I'm not sure if you guys probably watch YouTube. Mike Lake, he has got a turbo go-kart, but he did what you really need to do. He went to a 150cc motor and he put an electronic controller on it. And yeah, once you start getting into the territory of putting an ECU on these machines, I mean, you're basically building a proper machine at that point. Putting a turbo on a small engine like this almost wasn't meant to happen. At least not if you exceed this size of turbo. This is the smallest turbo you can buy, and it's probably as small as you can go in general. If you put one of these on like a 50cc, I mean, you're working God's work if you're getting that thing to run. Seen a few videos of that. But let's go over now the turbo aspect of it. So we've done the oiling. You guys understand now that you guys are doing way more than you need to achieve the goal. Just go with what you got on something like this. Same with the intake. So every time you see someone put one of these, even this turbo is big for this motor. No way around it. This feeds more air than this sucks, like in general. But it can add some power gains if you do it right. The main issue everyone seems to have when finished projects come around is surge. So the bike will run, the bike idle's good, but you hear every time, "Rrr, rrr, rrr." That's called surge. And that's from a buildup of pressure, more than the bike can take, it takes it in. More than the bike can take, it takes it in. You don't want that. That's just not a properly running bike. It's hard to tune that out on a single cylinder, especially the smaller the cylinder gets, especially with the carburetor. Hence why, again, if you're on YouTube, the YouTuber Mike Lake has got many videos on his go-kart on setting that up. But he took out his first motor, one like this. And I'm about to tell you why I think everyone takes out a motor when they're turboing a project. I swear to shit. It's like never any traffic on this road, and there's just non-stop cars in the rain today, so they're super loud. Car after fucking car. But guys, so what I think everyone does wrong, and everyone keeps on doing it, is trying to get boost to these engines. This is not really the right application for what I think people... Ooh, what is that? For what I think people want to do. Alright, so people keep putting these on machines and they want to see 5 pounds, 6 pounds, whatever. They want to see boost from this little guy into this motor. But I don't think seeing actual boost into this style of motor is a good thing, because it's a single cylinder which has drawbacks on its own. It is already a positive coefficient engine, and in case you guys don't understand what I'm saying with that, I will break that down as I go over the parts. But I guess I can break it down right now. So a positive coefficient engine means the engine, when it does its first 2 cycles, it draws in enough pressure that it will just run. And it's really hard to explain because it's not hard to explain if you know the proper wording and everything. But basically, if we compare it to my 3-wheeler in the back here, the first engine that I was going to turbo in this garage, it has a negative 2.6 coefficient in regard to sucking in atmosphere. So atmosphere is 14.7, I believe. It needs 2 times atmosphere in order to fire. I'm not sure if a lot of you guys realize that about some machines, but some machines you rip the air filter off and it doesn't run right. Putting the air filter back on will make it run right, because the engine requires the back pressure and the load to pressure up the cylinder to fire. That engine built for turboing. The more of a negative coefficient your engine has in regard to building pressure, the better it is for turboing, because even at idle, it is evening out the pressure. So that engine should actually run smooth as a baby's ass on a turbo, because it is built to take it. These motors, and any motor basically of this style, even the 90-degree opposing, are positive coefficient motors. Meaning if you take the carburetor off and take the exhaust off and start spinning it with a drill and like light fire to or squirt gas in a bottle, if I can find the video, I'll show it. These engines will run without anything else. Your throttle can be you squeezing gas out of the bottle into this hole, and it will just continue to run, because it does not need anything but itself to create that pressure and continue on its day. So, not great for turboing, not bad for turboing, but not great for turboing because it already has all the air it wants. So, pretty sure my video got cut off before, so we'll start from the beginning. All right, guys? So when you were dealing with a 1-inch hole, or even less a little bit, to begin with in the head, that's a very small hole, right? Okay, so now this new intake that we're putting on is actually even bigger than that 1-inch hole. So right off the bat, we are already cramming more air in. I know, not a lot, right? Racing carburetor. It's, I think, only 2 millimeters bigger, but a much bigger slide port. So we are feeding this bigger tube already into this bigger port, or into this smaller port. Remember, it all is restricted by the head. So unless you make the head bigger, you're not doing anything other than trying to maximize efficiency of the motor. So really the goal here, and that's why I say the goal isn't to build boost so much as help the motor reach max efficiency. Like if I wanted to build boost and I wanted to max this thing out and just hear it absolutely scream till it explodes, I'll put it on that little Pontiac Wave over there and we'll see this thing just absolutely whistle its way into the graveyard. But you'll see boost. You will see 10 pounds out of this thing hard. But for this application, we already have a larger carburetor, so it's basically as if we have already doubled the atmospheric PSI the motor can get. You know what I mean? So if the motor before can pull, well, okay, you can't double atmosphere, but I'm meaning the channel it has to pull that 14.7 has already doubled in size. So the motor is already running better than it was right off the bat, all right? Now, when you get to the very front here, your turbo, this whirlybird here, starts shoving in more air. That's when the problem starts happening. Because your engine is already seeing at idle what it likes. Now you can crank your idle and just have this thing ripping away and connect the turbo to it and you won't notice a difference, all right? And we're not talking about the pressurization yet of other things, but we'll get to that. So if you are hooking this up now, the engine will run just fine without it hooked up. The turbo will be spinning away. And then you just run a straight pipe from here to here. You should be fine. You know what I mean? Your engine probably will bog down a bit. You'll have to increase your idle and it'll rev right up. But as soon as you go to give it throttle and this boosts up, you might have a bad day because you're going to get surging hard. And surging in these little pipes generally leads to pop, right? Because it's such a small area. You surge 5 PSI into this, you're probably going to lose every joint. But the way people get around that, you build a bigger system. And the comment also led to this, saying that you're not going to build boost in such a short area. You need more piping to build boost. This is not a car. This is not multiple pistons and 2-inch piping pumping away, to do it. This thing will build boost with me just putting my hand over top of it. All these little switches between sizes will have it build boost. There is no way it won't build boost. It's how much boost. But again, that all leads back to people's expectations. Are these things build 5 to 10 pounds of boost? That's not what you want. You don't want 5, because boost is measured not at the intake manifold, but is referenced off the turbo's back pressure itself. So you don't want 5 pounds here pushing into your turbo, because that means, or pushing into your intake, because that means this is always getting hammered with compressed air. Not sure if you guys know, compressed air is hot. Hot air, no good for motor. Motor piston, go ping, ping, bang. So generally people who turbo their motor for the first time end up blowing their motor because of the simple fact that they overpipe it. They have small pipe to big pipe to small pipe. You're compressing too much of a load, because if you put a small pipe to a big pipe and then back to a small pipe, you're going to see some sort of reference of boost in the big pipe. But compressing it back down now heats it up again. Okay, now you get an intercooler. It doesn't matter. The longer and bigger you make the system on a small turbo, the less efficient and more hot you are getting. Unless, again, to reference Mike Lake, the go-kart he's building at top speed, he will probably be getting a cooling effect. But he needs to get it under load in that top speed before that much piping really takes effect. You're wasting the pressure and you're having the motor almost still scavenge at that point, which, I don't know, defeats the purpose. You don't want scavenge. I mean, that's what the oil is doing, right? You want that with the oil, but you don't really want that with this. The whole point of a turbo is to be packing air in there, not scavenging from the turbo, you know what I mean? So how do you get around that? How do you get around putting all this complicated big piping and everything? Because even they all still have surge. The motor sits there and goes from the switches in the sizing. Well, I think I might have solved it. Okay? I think I might have. And you know what, guys? I'm not even... This is a suck-through... This is a blow-through design. So the turbo is blowing through the carburetor into the motor. There is a suck-through design that I'm not even talking about because I don't consider it real, even though it is real, where people put the carburetor on the outside of the turbo and then just run the intake to the motor. I don't know what someone was smoking when they did that, but no one has ever done that in real life as far as I know. You don't take your carb off your car or your truck, like older one, and put the turbo on the intake. That's just weird. So I don't know why half of the stuff being done nowadays is being done, where it came around, who followed who for doing it. It's like if your gas tank's above your motor, why you're putting a fuel pump on it, put a better carburetor and a bigger jet, okay? Okay, so this, I think, is going to help me. This is basically just plumbing tube, but it is going to be sealed on the ends, obviously, by caps. I mean, it's not obvious, but it will be. And then tighten down on the caps. And then this will connect to the carburetor. So you have a flex joint to hopefully eliminate flutter. So that comes, so now we're talking about the flutter that I was talking about earlier. So with a whole bunch of rigid piping, in my opinion, with a system this small, because again, everything rides on this tiny little hole in the front, you get back pressure, you get ripples, you get waves, you almost get a 2-stroke effect, which you don't want on a 4-stroke. Because the waves start coming back with all the piping. If I ran 3 feet of piping around this thing, it would just be an infinite baffle of piping. You don't want that. Okay, you want a nice smooth delivery of air and power to the carburetor. Okay, so that's where I figured this bad boy is going to come in. So, where did I put it? So, what we have here is this homemade contraption option, and then the old intake off the bike. So, I'm going to cut the adapter off because, again, this adapter is the size of the motor intake. It is not that big. So you guys see my point. This is the size of the hole we are now shoving all the air in. You know what I mean? So if this is the original size of that hole, we're trying to shove that much air in. Look how much restriction there already is, right? But that's all part of it. That's all part of how you build the boost in such a small system, is by keeping everything small. I'm not having 12 feet of pipe kicking around. I'm cutting off this end, and I'm welding this to this adapter so it properly connects to the turbo and lifts it up a tiny bit away from everything. Then I am cutting this end off of this and putting it in here. So it will adapt into, like, inside there somewhere. So that when this connects to the intake, this bolts onto the turbo as such, and then goes into the intake that way. Now, what am I hoping to do by achieving that goal? So, with the turbo coming off into an immediate 90, but it's coming off at least its own proper size into a smaller tube, it's going to start pressurizing the turbo, or pressurizing the turbo immediately. So that should help with spooling, because these small turbos don't love to spool unless they're under load, meaning if they're just sitting there, they don't love to spool. But that immediately should get that spooling, which would be nice. Then, having it go into this pipe couple of things that are going on here. So you guys will notice it's gonna come in right here, and then it almost immediately goes in and hits a wall. And then the intake is taking it in. Now it can just bypass and go in. I'm hoping it does. But the goal here is that when the turbo goes stew and pressurizes this tank, because this will all be sealed. I hope I can make this look nice. Just wrap it with exhaust wrap or something. When it comes in, it's going to have to go in and pressurize up this side and then go into the intake. So basically, I'm making a boost tube, but it's to self-contain the offset, the surge. Yeah, so the surge and the flutter. I am hoping that by putting the turbo under load, I will eliminate, and under short piping, I will eliminate the flutter of it all. But by using this as a boost tube to fill this chamber with pressure, basically before it starts really going in, this is going to be the main capitulation point of all the air. It's gonna all be here. So this cap will be seeing the actual PSI. So I could reference off, because no, I'm going to reference off of this tube off of here. But I'm just saying, so this is where the pressure will build up, is this side of the tube. And then it will evenly flow into the carburetor from there. So it'll look like that. I don't know, it might look kind of weird, but it'll look better than having a whole bunch of piping going around. And just working it all out, I wholeheartedly believe that when I fire it up, it's not going to have any of the flutter or the surge or anything a small engine has. And I guess I should have given you guys this explanation to begin with, but on a single cylinder, when it sucks in air, you don't have another chance for 3 cycles to shove in air. On a twin cylinder, one sucks in air, and when it's kicking the air out, another one's already sucked in air. So a turbo works real good on a twin cylinder and up because it's always being pulled. You know, it's just got to keep up with the pull of the motor. On a single cylinder, it's basically like pulls air, hammers air, pulls air, hammers air, pulls air, hammers air. So a turbo really pulls air, hammers air hard, right? But again, that explains why I'm keeping the system tight, keeping the system within itself basically. So that the oil is going to go right back. It's going to be pulled by the feed directly back. Sorry, I thought that was cracked for a second. It's not, it's just casting. It will be pulled directly back into itself and actually get the cam, so we're not going to blow the motor. The turbo will be basically as close to direct feed as I can possibly get it, but I do understand the principle of a direct feed would fry the motor. Basically, like I would definitely just heat everything up and fry it immediately. But you do not need necessarily to cool this air and or cool the oil, because the motor, all of this should be running under like load, right? Like you shouldn't, once you turbo something, you don't just sit in traffic and idle for hours and hours. That's not a good idea to begin with. So if this thing's getting run, it's getting run for the purpose of moving. And for that reason, I'm not too worried about it getting too hot. But my main concern should be taken care of with this load contraption. Take care of the flutter, take care of the surge. So this thing should be able to idle and receive load with zero issue. Because as soon as that turbo pressure's up, it's going to come in, pressure up here instead of at the face of the carb, and then go out into the carb as it requests more. Also, one thing I learned the other day, I didn't know this, I don't know if you guys knew this, but when you take a carb apart, I've cleaned a lot of carbs, I've done a lot of stuff, but I actually just never looked at this one feature. So when you take all this apart, so I'm not sure, hang on, you know what, guys? All right, guys. So You know what? Let me turn to something dark so you can see this. So, what I didn't know is all these notches with that pin are not just for show. EB26A. So those notches actually raise and lower your intake on the slide, on the carburetor. So if you are running a slightly higher intake engine, you want to change the height of this. And the height of this one, and apparently they run perfect. It was on the second notch up there. So it's on the bottom notch now. It was on the second notch up when I got here. And apparently they run perfect on that. So I have a feeling bumping it open a little more is going to help in the long run. So, as you guys can see now, with that all put back together, that carb is just that tick higher now. So, that right off the bat will really help in regard to taking in some of that air, right? Now, the final thing to discuss, and one thing everyone also does, and I do understand why they do this, the fueling. So, getting fuel into these carburetors when you have a turbocharged system. Again, I kind of feel like people are overcomplicating the system, but it starts with people trying to really get boost out of these turbos. So when you're really trying to get boost out of these bad boys, you're really hammering this turbo. So when you're hammering this turbo, or not the turbo, the carburetor. When you're hammering the carburetor, you're going to hammer everything. And basically you're going to hammer the fuel system, which is going to pump out and continue on its way. Now, there's a couple ways you could solve that problem. Oh, excuse me. Fuel limiter. Damn it. Now, there are a couple of ways that you can solve this problem. Really, none of them are easier the best. And even I am actually worried about it happening. So, what you see here is the drain off the bottom. And if this bad boy decides it wants to overpressurize itself, which, by the way, all of this should eliminate that, because this will only take what it wants. It's already set up for a little more air, so what's coming in should be good. But then when it wants more, it'll have the freedom to suck without getting blasted and hammered by it. You know what I mean? And it'll have a bigger jet, so it'll deliver more fuel to begin with. But again, if it goes south and it does pressure up the bowl, guess who's getting another jet? This thing is. You know what I mean? And it will just absolutely hammer down. Oh, there it is. Back into itself. So I'm not afraid to drill a hole in a carburetor if it starts pissing me off. But it will certainly take all the fuel it can get at that point if it starts doing that. So that's that. That's the explanation. That's the theory on what I'm doing, guys. There's a reason for it. I didn't have this last time, so I definitely didn't show you guys. And I was questioning how I was going to do it, but I think that's the best route. Even, let me see if I can get this on here. Even if it's going to look goofy, you know what I mean? Even if it's not going to look perfect, I think it could look okay. And it'll be fine. But not going to know until I run it, right? So, after giving you guys a little lecture on my math and my science, how about I tell you guys what's up? So, I've been waiting on the parts. That's how I film you guys. I've been waiting on the parts to be done. The starter cover looks like a freaking masterpiece. A literal freaking masterpiece, okay? Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And in case you guys are wondering what I'm talking about, this is what I'm talking about. The engraving. I still got to polish this even. Oh, look at that. So, a lot of this stuff is getting that treatment. So, we shall see when the stuff gets here, because it's almost done, how that all looks. But now that that stuff is on its way back, this is figured out, I think. It's basically time to tear it apart. I literally just have to cut that up, make it fit the intake I had there, wherever the heck I just put that. Oh, right over there. Make it fit that. So, I mean, I can do all that. I can clock the turbo now because I bought a wrench this morning when I bought the other stuff. So I'll clock the center. I'm leaving everything else the way it is. I'm just going to rotate the center so the intake of the oil is that way. I am going to have the outline come around the front of the turbo under the line, go in, have the return, go just directly 90 back to this. It'll work. It'll work better than a lot of the systems. And then tube that front. So I just got, really, it's all set up. So right now, today, I am going to be putting the tank on. The tank needs the front piece of metal, which of course I won't find. Oh, right there. Welded on. Because this style of tank actually welds on with like mounts like that. You know what I mean? So I'm going to get that welded on. This cleaned up for paint so I don't have to clean it up on the bike. And then this seat, I don't know if I showed you guys, because that's the tank, which is a little oversized. We're going with a seat that's a little oversized. Call me retarded, call me not retarded. I think, whatever, it'll look good. I'll make it look good. I'll make everything look good, and it'll be comfortable. So you'll be able to ride for as long as you want, and ride comfortably for as long as you want on the turbo bad boy. But I had to go get some more welding wire. I bought like 10 of these when they were on sale for 25 bucks. And now they're 17 bucks. But that's it, guys. That's the update. That's me letting you know my theory and thought on what goes wrong with these engines. Because a lot of people are turboing them. A lot of people are doing stuff with them. But everyone does so much extra shit. And again, when it comes to the oiling, stop it. That's not where it goes. It needs to hit your cam. You're gonna blow your motor. It needs to go back, okay? Going back into here is back into the case. That doesn't do anything for the rest of your motor, okay? You stop it. As for the turbo, stop overcomplicating systems on something not meant to be turboed. That's the lesson we're going with on that one, okay? Not meant to be turboed, big turbo for this. If this was like what the other YouTuber did, and he put a 150cc, a 200, like that 200 three-wheeler motor. Good for turbo. Good for this size turbo. Not good for turbo. You know what I mean? So let's take those lessons to heart. And just so you guys know, this is about to be there. I am going to be painting the frame this week, repainting it all, and with the motor off, I'm going to get the motor all cleaned up and everything wrapped and ready to go. This will be just a shiny thing on a desk all put together, ready to go. Because this can all go into here, like put together. So, yeah. All right, guys. I do appreciate you dropping by for this edition of What Is Up, What's Going On. And if you want a turbo small motor like this, I was about to say don't be too intimidated to do it, but just put time into it. Nowadays on YouTube, Google, all that stuff, you can find almost all the information you need, except for when I was talking about like the positive and negative coefficient of a motor. You have to get a little more in depth to understand what that means. But again, if I put the video in earlier of these engines running with just someone squirting gas into it, you understand what I mean. They run without help. That thing needs help to run. or it will not. But when it does run, it runs strong. But guys, again, thanks for dropping by. Hopefully you learned something, and if you didn't and I'm just a wrong jackass, feel free to tell me. But we'll see how it turns out here, probably within the next week or two, because all the parts are about to be on their way back, and it's just on my ass to get at it now. So you guys have a good day, have a good week. I'll see you again shortly. Bye-bye.